If you remember racing the Boonta Eve Classic, boosting until your engines blew up, and buying junk from Watto,
why nobody buys?
then you grew up playing Star Wars Racer, but which one? Because there were 6 different versions released, and in this video we're going to compare each of them. But first, let's set the scene. 25 years ago, The Phantom Menace was everywhere. It was the most merchandised movie of all time, and the film's pod race sequence made up a huge part of it. From vehicles to micro machines to Lego and everything in between. Sabulba Kush, anyone? The high-speed action and cool-looking vehicles also made the pod race ripe for a video game adaptation. LucasArts quickly realized this and began work on the game while the movie was still in pre-production. They would borrow elements from established futuristic races like Wipeout and F-Zero while working with Lucasfilm on the designs of both the races and the pods. So how well did they do? Well, let's begin by taking a look at the original version of the game released on the same day as the movie for the Nintendo 64 and PC. Now, the Nintendo 64 version used the expansion pack add-on, which would double the game's resolution from 320 by 240 up to 640 by 480. Meanwhile, the PC version could run at a much higher resolution depending on your hardware. The PC version also starts with a pre-rendered opening reminiscent of the pod race from the movie. Each subsequent track also has a pre-rendered cutscene showing off the planet and its environment. Now, these cutscenes would be absent from the Nintendo 64 version due to the limited cartridge space. The fidelity and quality of the music is also much higher on PC, and for some reason the music only starts playing on the final lap on N64. But it wasn't all downgrades for the Nintendo 64. At launch, this was the only version of the game to support 2-player split screen. The PC version would have LAN-based multiplayer. Also, entering a special code would allow you to use 2 Nintendo 64 controllers to pilot the pod, similar to the way Anakin would do it in the movie. But when it comes to the content itself, both the N64 and PC games are pretty much identical. Both have you race, unlock, and customize a bunch of different pod races in circuits all around the galaxy. Now, Episode 1 Racer could have easily been just another cash grab, low effort tie-in racing game, but LucasArts really did work to try and give this game some depth. Apart from the genuine feeling of going 600 miles per hour, the pods are also able to slide, roll, and pitch in different directions, which are crucial for the later tracks in the game. The racers also have afterburners, allowing for an added boost. However, you will have to be tactical because if you spam the engines for too long, they will overheat and blow up. Another nice addition is the repair function, which, if you're anything like me, you would have used quite a lot. The trade-off here is that your pod will slow down while you're making repairs. Overall, I think LucasArts struck a great balance between fun, arcade-style gameplay and strategy.
It's a new lap record!
The game has several different modes, but I think the one we all remember is the tournament mode. This allows you to compete in 4 different championships. The higher your pole position, the better the payout. And the credits you make in the tournament can be used to buy upgrades from Watto's shop. And I love that they got the original actor to do the voice.
Chat, gadanowalia, mitwanano pata. You think you gonna beat Sebulba with that pod racer of yours? Ah!
He also does a rendition of the Cantina song at the end of each race. Of course, if you don't have enough credits to buy the upgrades in the store, you can always go out into the back to see what Watto is selling in the junkyard.
Look around! I got a lots of junk.
Also, did anyone spend ages admiring their pod in the 3D viewer? But of course, you can't have a racing game without the circuits, and Racer features 25 tracks set across 8 different worlds. Naturally, we have Tatooine, which has 2 versions of the Boonta Classic, a straightforward beginner's track and a much more complex version with diverging tracks and sharp turns. Apparently, the textures for this level were sourced from the movie itself. Next up is Mon Gaza, a polluted industrial space mining planet. The tracks here will cut through loading fields, spice mines, and shanty towns, all covered in a thick orange mist. Aqualaris is a proto-Camino type planet. These tracks have you race above and underwater, cutting through tunnels which connect the floating cities. Plus, you get a cameo from the Bongo. Ando Prime is a snowy planet filled with mountainous roads, slopes, and frozen lakes, which for some reason will make the pod skid. Malastair makes for a really interesting interesting contrast. The tracks on this planet are shrouded in darkness, which is broken up by the green methane gas coming out of the ground. UVO 4 is a prison colony asteroid which also doubles up as a mining operation. The tracks here will have you barely squeezing through obstacles and tight openings while trying to avoid the asteroids in the zero-gravity tunnels. Ordubana is an abandoned gas mine that pays homage to Bespin. These tracks have you race through narrow suspended bridges and circulation tunnels as you try to clear the many gaps in the skyway, oftentimes unsuccessfully. And finally we have Barunda, which is filled with all sorts of different locations, from the city to the sand mines to the inside of a volcano. It also has this tropical beach section which looks like it's been lifted straight out of a Mario Kart game, apart from the giant Easter Island heads. Overall, I think LucasArts did a great job at creating a set of vibrant and varied tracks that made the pod racing feel like a galaxy-wide sport. Also, did anyone love looking at the concept art in the instruction manual? In addition to the exotic collection of circuits, Racer also had a big roster of pilots and their pods. All of the racers from the movies such as Sebulba, Doug Bold, Gusgano, and Ben Quadranaros make a return. Plus, the game also includes several characters and pods whose concept designs didn't quite make it into the final cut. Characters like Fud Sang, Toy Dampener, and Bullseye Navigator, who's seen some shit. Episode 1 Racer would become an instant critical and commercial hit, selling over 3 million copies on the Nintendo 64 alone. A Game Boy Color version of the game would be released in time for Christmas of '99. It featured this fun ad which had the Game Boys flying around on pod engines. Naturally, the game itself was a bit more down to earth. It's set in a top-down perspective that has you race against a single opponent across one lap. Controlling the pod can get a bit tricky, but at least you do have these arrows that warn you of the upcoming turns. There are only 4 planets, but each one has 4 circuits. The tracks have been simplified, but still retain some of the key features from the console version, like the ice fields on Ando Prime, the beaches of Baronda, and the green gases on Malastair. Did anyone else have nightmares from the Bullseye Navigator just popping up on screen? The game did support multiplayer via link cable and has a battery-powered rumble unit built into the actual cartridge. Just look at this absolute unit. The following year saw Racer released for the Sega Dreamcast. This version did include all of the cutscenes from the PC and allowed you to post your high score to Sega.com. Now visually there's not that much difference between this and the expansion pack N64 version. Here is a comparison of all 3 versions. Next up is Racer Arcade. Now this is more of an honorary entry on the list because it's actually a separate game developed by Sega. Naturally, this being an arcade game, the graphics have been overhauled and are generally much better than the console and PC version. This game's big feature was its unique cabinet design, which allowed for the double throttle controls, kind of like the N64 hack. Unfortunately, this version only had 4 tracks: the Tatooine Bantha and Bunta Eve Classic tracks, Etifor's Smuggler's Cove, and Malastair's Pixelito Challenge. There are also only 4 racers: Anakin, Sebulba, Ben Quadranaros, and Gesgano. And this time around, your pod is indestructible. Now, the Star Wars franchise would eventually move on from pod racing, focusing on new movies and new tie-in games. But in 2020, Racer would see a re-release for the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch, the latter of which would add motion control support to the original game. This version now ran at 1080p in widescreen, but the graphics, textures, and draw distance was still the same as the original, for better or worse. But even if the visuals didn't quite hold up, the gameplay most definitely did. And 25 years later, Racer is still incredibly fun to play both on your own or to play a split screen. And so there we have it, every version of Episode 1 Racer, a game that's gone on to be a textbook example of how the Star Wars license could be used to create both a great tie-in product and a fun game in its own right. Racer's legacy would live on through a sequel and various pod racer sequences in future games, but that's a topic for another video. In the meantime, please let me know your memories of Episode 1 Racer. Which was your favorite version and how many times did you fall off the Malastair ramp? As always, thanks for watching. Please consider supporting me on Patreon, and a big thanks to all my existing patrons. Also, if you've enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.